Islam. If you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America and become a part of this divine movement. Then you will have power to redeem your race because you will know who you are and who your forefathers were. Because where there is unity, there is strength. Together we stand and divided we fall. Come, good people, because the prophet Noble Jew Ali sent to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you now have need each and every one of you who think that your conditions can be better. This is the field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take your place in the affairs of men. If the European and other nations are helping him, why not you? It is your problem. The Negro problem is being solved only as it can, and that is through the Moorish national divine movement. If you have a nation, you must have a free national name in order to be recognized by this nation as an American citizen. This is what was meant when it was said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you." At this time, I'd like to recite the Moorish American prayer, because this is the source from which I draw my strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Jew Ali. Amen. First off, I'd like to rise, rocking my soul in the bosom of Abraham, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible, the one who stretcheth forth the heaven with his hands, who have described with his fingers the courses of the stars, who set his bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and said to the stormy winds, "Be still." I'd like to give honor to the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star, talking about none other than our holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Jew Ali. I'd like to give honor to Prophet Noble Jew Ali because it was he who reached down into the watery grave of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that's harmed to set you and me back upright on our feet again. I'd like to give honor to the forerunner to the Prophet Noble Jew Ali, Marcus Moses Garvey. The reason why I want to give Marcus Garvey his propers, and being that he is the forerunner to the Prophet Noble Jew Ali, and this guy Trump was talking about Kamala Harris today in reference to her descent and her nationality and her bloodline. But one thing we know, she is from St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, the same place that our forerunner is from. So I'd like to give honor to her because of her bloodline. I'd like to give honor to all of those and honor to all of you that have and will aid and assist us in this, our divine and gigantic mission, the uplifting of fallen humanity. Last but not least, I'd like to give a special honor to effort, because so many of us don't even try. At this time, I'm going to read from the Moorish Holy Quran, the book of the seven seals, that none was able to open, and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. But before I read from the Moorish Holy Quran, I want to be a little talking to you. I want to talk to you about what I'm going to talk about in this Moorish Quran. Now, we have 101 questions. Jew Ali gave us 101 questions to learn. And as we learn these 101 questions, we'll know who our forefathers are, were, and forevermore to be. So I want to read from the prophet's literature in the 101 questions. And I'm going to read from verse 27. And verse 27, because every Moorish American knows this. When you first go on, join the Moorish Science Temple, this here is some of the things that we have to learn. We have to know these things because Drew Ali say, teach these lessons to your little ones that they may learn to love instead of hate. So I'm teaching right now one of those things that he told us to teach our little ones. And I'm going to read from verse 27. It says, will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came? And the lesson is, some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. Now let's stop right here for a minute, because it said, will you give in brief the line genealogy was Jesus came, but the first one they said was Abraham. And one thing we know through scientific study and investigation, Abraham was not always Abraham. He was first Abram. And when he found grace in the eyes of the great God Allah, then he became Abraham. Abram to Abraham. So I want to talk about that this evening, because I'm going back into what we heard earlier on the news about this guy, Trump, and what he was saying about Kamala Harris. And it's very important that we teach on this, because they might don't know this themselves. What do I mean? I mean that when you begin to study your history, I'm not talking about his story, I'm talking about history. When you begin to study your history, you'll find out that in 711, the Moors went into Spain. And we went into Spain to give Europe civilization, to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Now, when you begin to talk about bringing somebody out of the Dark Ages, how can you teach on that? Because when we went into Spain, we was Moors, descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Even in 1453, Byzantine, when the Moors fought with the Ottoman Turks to restore the Islamic creed. This was 1453. This was 1453 Byzantine. But you have to understand, when we went into Spain in 711, and we stayed in Spain until 1492. But when the Moors fought with the Ottoman Turks to restore the Islamic creed, you have to understand that this was before the European nations had their rise. So we're trying to teach something. We're trying to teach it because it's something that you need to know. You need to know it because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. Now let's get back to this. It's a Abraham. Then it's talking about Boaz by Ruth. Now we have to look at this because we're talking about our genealogy. This is the genealogy that our forefathers gave to us. Something that was taken away from you and me. As I said earlier, when I first started school, in the first grade, my teacher told me that I was a Negro. And everybody that I knew, all my friends now, 80, 75, all of them said that we was Negroes. But Drew Ali told us in the same book, he said, Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. When I was in elementary school again, John F. Cook School in Washington, D.C., the teacher told me that I was colored. So you ain't Negro no more. Now you're colored. So colored is anything that has been painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. Then the teacher came back. So you're no longer colored. So we get ready to call you black now because Martin Luther King just got killed. And you done took on all these black concepts and ideologies, so you're going to be who you are. We're going to start calling you black. You can't honor your forefathers no more because the only black flag that I know is the one that killed roaches. And if you do not honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given you, then the worst is yet to come. So now we as a people is black. But in 1913, the Holy Prophet Noble Jew Ali founded the Moorish Science Temple of America. And you got to understand that when you begin to look at Ward Dean Muhammad, and when you begin to look at all these other people that talking about Islam, you have to understand that there was no Islam taught in America until the Holy Prophet Noble Jew Ali came. And when he came, he told us that we was not Negro, colored, or black because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders. Now we have babies. We have children. And if man today what his forefathers were yesterday, and you telling your children, and you telling your grandchildren that they are not Negro in color, but they are black. And when you do that, then you're talking outside of the constitutional fold. Every nation, even when I was in the military, they said there's no flag right of the American flag. Now you put me in a tomb. And when you put me in a tomb, then I wrestle with the conquerors of men, but I conquered death. And I stamp upon him and rose and brought immortality to light and painted on the walls of time a rainbow for the sons of men. And what I've done, all men can do, because the gospel of the resurrection of the dead is not confined to Jew or Greek. It is the heritage of every man of every time and clime, and I am here a demonstrator of the power of man. So we're looking right here, and we're talking about Jesus now. We say Abraham, because see, Abraham was the father of the faithful. And then there's a brother by the name of Jacquin, and there's a brother by the name of Boaz. And Boaz married Ruth. And from that union came Solomon, David, etc. But that's before. That's even before, way before the slave trade. So we're going to have to get into that now. We're going to have to get in that because it say Joseph by Mary. So now we're talking about Joseph and Mary. We're talking about Jesus. Now they got us taking Jesus and buried him in Vatican Square. That's what they say they did to Jesus. They say they took Jesus. They say they put him in Vatican Square. Well, when did they do this? Well, you know that the Moors went into Spain in 711 to 1492. Now, 1492, a few years later, became the 15th century. And when you begin to talk about the 15th century, everybody get to talking now because this was after the Moors were put into slavery. See? The Moors was put into slavery in 1492, but in the 15th century. Let me read this right here. And once I read it, I'm going to get back to it because I want to read from the Moorish Holy Quran. And I'm going to read on this wise. Chapter 46, the beginning of Christianity. And it reads on this wise. The foundation of Christianity began in Rome. The Roman nation founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. Jesus himself was of the true blood of the ancient Canaanites and Moabites and inhabitants of Africa, seeking to redeem his people in those days from the pressure of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. Rome crucified him according to their law. Then Europe had peace for a long time until Muhammad I came upon the scene and fulfilled the works of Jesus of Nazareth. The holy teachings of Jesus was to the common people, to redeem them from under the great pressure of the hands of the unjust, that the rulers and the rich would not oppress the poor, also that the lion and the lamb may lie down together, and neither will be harmed when morning came. These teachings were not accepted by the rulers, neither by the rich, because they loved the principles of the 10th commandments. Through the 10th commandments, the rulers and the rich live while the poor suffer and die. All nations of the earth in these modern days are seeking peace. But there is but one true and divine way that peace may be obtained in these days, and it is through the love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice being taught universally to all lands and all nations. Now, we're talking about a part of history, because through the advent of slavery with the Moorish Empire, the whole world changed. The whole world changed during that time. So now we're talking about the foundation of Christianity. My aunt, I had an aunt. She's still with me though. And in 1941, her and her husband founded a church in Washington, D.C. called Our Isle of Patmos Baptist Church. Matter of fact, when I went home recently, I went to the barber shop, and there was a brother in there by the name of Bernard Fernandez. And his mother was a part of that church. And everybody in the neighborhood went to her homecoming when she passed. So my aunt was pretty sharp. We traveled the country and did a lot of things together, and she taught me. But one thing she taught me at the end of it, when you hear brothers and when you hear sisters talking about Christianity, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to hear it, because in essence, you know that in all the world there are but two things: the higher self and the lower self. The higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life that breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. Now the lower self is the carnal self. Is the body of desires, is a reflection of higher self distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. Now I remember, and matter of fact, it's on my page, that there was a Chinese brother. He was one of these guys from China. And he was sharp, and he said that the Chinese people were the strongest and the most intelligent than any other people that ever came to the face of the earth. Then he came back. He said, man, I did my research, and I did my study, and I investigated, and I come to find out that Africa is the cradle of civilization. Everybody came from Africa. See, now, don't get caught up, because the 14th chapter of St. John, it says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, for in my Father's house are many mansions. And if it was not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, ye may be also. So we ain't hung up in an illusion, because we know we the founders of civilization. But when you begin to talk about the 14th chapter of St. John, and when it say that in my Father's house are many mansions, it's because there's different concepts. There are different mindsets. And this is what we have to learn here, especially in our Moorish Temple of America, because Drew Ali told us. He said, through carnal thoughts, words, and deeds, man tore himself away from Allah. He debased himself. And how do you debase yourself from God? You debase yourself from God by not living according to the laws of God. See, in all the world, ain't but two things. One is good and the other is bad. the whole world was once known as Asia. Europe at this time was not even in existence. And when you begin to talk about Asia and Europe, we're talking about the higher self and the lower self. Because the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life that breathes justice, mercy, love, and right. Can the higher self pass away? No. Why? Because it is a law in man. Now we looking here, and it say Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. But we stopping right here now. Let's talk about Joseph and Mary. Because when you talk about Joseph and Mary, you're talking about another bloodline. You're talking about Joaquin, and you're talking about Boaz. You're talking about the two pillars. And the two pillars is your genealogy. Everybody have a genealogy. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. Now, we had a brother that just passed, and they're getting ready to have his homegoing service in a few days. And we was in a meeting. And being in the meeting, the minister or the brother, he got up and started talking. He said, well, our brother is gone now. But right now we know that he with God. He's up there in heaven with God and talking to God. But the book says, man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And when somebody passed from many ages, man will tarry until all his lessons are learned. So just because you passing and you think you going to heaven, many ages, you got to go through all these lessons that you learned down here on the plane of things made manifest. And once you go through these trials and tribulations and overcome these foes that are within you, then you can talk to God. But you can't be out there in the street doing everything that's diametrically opposed to what God say, and then you pass form, everybody come to your funeral and tell me, yeah, man, he all right now, he with Jesus. Come on, man, be for real. You going through all the ways of life. That's the purpose for us on this plane of things made manifest, to overcome those foes that we have within ourselves so we can get close to God. You're going to have to see him. You're going to have to overcome it. Whatever I go through and whatever you go through, I might overcome mine quicker than you. Or you might overcome yours quicker than me. I remember a brother, friend of mine, we just talked. And matter of fact, we've been in the Moorish until years ago together. And he told me one day, he said, man, recently, last week, he said, man, you know, I still got a lot of foes in me. And I still got a lot of stuff that I got to overcome. I said, that don't make sense to me. And the reason why it don't make sense to me is because for 50 years, you still talking about that foe that you overcame 40 years ago. I was with you. And you still fighting that foe. Why? The will of man make possible the actions of the Holy Breath. And when the will of Allah and the will of man become one, then the resurrection is a fact. You can overcome these foes because you're going to have to overcome them. In order for you to reach that state of bliss, you're going to have to overcome these foes. This is the purpose. Now, I remember it being taught to me that you have a lot of brothers and you have a lot of sisters. And we're talking about the lessons that the prophet gave us. But he gave us the tools of the workshop of the mind. See, these tools of the workshop of the mind is where things are made of thought, because thought is the cause of it all. We're talking about thought, and we're talking about building up character. So I might be right here with you, and you might be right here with me, but we still wrestling with foes. And all these things that we still doing out here on this plane of things made manifest, you need to understand that you're going to have to overcome, and you're going to have to talk to the great God Allah for this. Because every tub must stand on its own bottom, and every tongue must confess his own. Now let's look back again. It's talking about Joseph and Mary. We already talked about Jacqueline and Boaz. But we're talking about Boaz and Ruth and Joseph and Mary because we're talking about the pillars now. Just where you come in the door at. It's in the book. This book will take you to Genesis to the Revelation because when you begin to talk about the Bible, you got to understand that the only thing that come out of Europe is wheat and hay. That book right here didn't come from Europe. It came from Asia. Asiatic Muslim. Because there's two formulations, Asiatic and Muslim. And this is what the prophet tells us that we are. We are Asiatic Muslim. And a Muslim is one who submits his will to Allah. And how do you submit your will to Allah? By overcoming these foes that he has. Now I got a book right here. This book I have right here in my hand come through the Moorish Science Temple of America. Noble Ali gave us song books to sing. And the reason why he gave us song books to sing, because it come out of Asia. You know good and well, the only thing come out of Europe again is wheat and hay. And the higher self, which is the mother of virtues, it wasn't no virtues there. It was no harmonies of life there. But we sing. We sing, and Rome took it away from you. They took our Jesus in the 15th century, buried him in Vatican Square. And when they buried Jesus in Vatican Square, they took on our name. All them people that was over there in Europe, European, took on our name. Now they want to be Jesus. But you know what? We used to sing too. Listen. Great change since I've been born. There's a great change since I've been born. The things I used to do, the places I used to go, the friends I used to have. There's been a great change since I've been born. So we're talking about being born again. They were talking about being born again. Said to be born again, must you go back to your mother's womb? That's what they said. They said if you want to be born again, you have to go back to your mother's womb. But the book say that which is made of the flesh is flesh, and that which is made of spirit is spirit. So all of us who's Asiatic Muslim. We had a brother I seen on a paper book. This brother said, man, I'm giving up all these things of the world. So we could sound real good. We could sound real good. But all of us going to have to answer and say, every tub must stand on his own bottom. And every tongue must confess its own. That's why I say through sin and disobedience. That's why I had to leave Portland for real. Because you can't serve two masters at the same time. I can't go to the temple. I can't go to the mosque. I can't go to the synagogue if I'm still fighting these things, because there's certain things you got to let go. Give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar. Give Allah the thoughts of your law, because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father, unless it's by extend beyond the great universe creator, Allah himself. So now we're talking about Jesus. Jesus means justice. And justice is dealing upright, equal, and fair. And Jesus had a mother. And Jesus' mother's name was Mary. And when we look in the scriptures and all the books that we study in the synagogue, when it's talking about Jesus, Mary was a Jewish girl. And if Mary was a Jewish girl, and Mary had a Jesus' mother, name was Anna, and Anna was married to Jacqueline. You don't hear about this in the church, because they can't tell you everything, because they done took it. They done took it from you. They done took it from me. And now I'm doing everything that's diametrically opposed, but in order for us to come under a foundation that will redeem us from our sinful ways and to warn us of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. Now, what is the wrath? They're talking about the wrath, but I'm living the wrath because when I live hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms, then you know who I am? I am the lower self. I am the carnal self. I am the body of desire, a reflection of my higher self, but it's distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. Now, we're talking about something that's distorted, and we're talking about the murky ethers of the flesh. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. You know what hurts so much? That a lot of these leaders that we first had in the Moorish Science Temple of America, a lot of them sold out, a lot of them took money from the government, and now we're all calling ourselves black. But they paid people. See, we was Moorish Americans. And why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. And who are these Moroccans? They are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Drew Ali said, many are called and only a few are chosen. And he said he can count it on his hands who can be saved and still have fingers left over. But we have overcome the biggest problem, because one of the things that they wanted so much is for you and I to forget who we were. All of the scholars and everybody today, you hear them, they are talking about the Moors. But you know, I'm looking in my book. I'm looking in the Moorish literature where Noble Jew Ali is talking to the Moors. And he say, he's given us a lesson. He said in on chapter 45, chapter 46, and the title of this chapter, we're going to look at verse 14. He says, every subordinate temple of the Grand Major Temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and create the laws and customs as long as they're in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet and the Grand Temple. So we have a lot of people that got a lot of different temples and grand bodies. You got to go back and ain't but one. And in order for us to deal with reparation and everything else that Jew Ali told us about, first thing we're going to have to do is come back under one head like the prophet left it. It ain't but one. Ain't but one Moorish Science Temple of America. It ain't but one Moorish Science Temple of America. It ain't but one Moorish Science Temple of America. Now, you got Moorish this and you got Moorish that. But it said whenever a nation is in need of a prophet, Allah will send one. And he sent Noble Jew Ali to redeem us from our sinful ways. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the name and principles that delude to slavery. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Now, a question was asked me. And this is something that was real rough. They said, man, have you ever heard of Millie, Small Bay, Lovett Bay, and Farmer Bay? I said, quite naturally, I heard of Millie, Small Bay, Lovett Bay, and Farmer Bay, because you got to understand that around a few years after some things happened, Millie left Chicago. He left Chicago and went somewhere else. But what took place was this. And a lot of people is talking about it. You know, when Noble Ali went over in the East, and he took this brother Lynch-Bey with him to be his interpreter, because this brother knew a lot of different languages. But in them moving across the country and out of the country to have this meeting, the prophet had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with this brother. And by spending a lot of time with this brother a few years later, now, before I get into that, it's very important. I was looking at a sister, Lynch-Bey, Lynch-Bey's daughter, Lynch-Bey out of Connecticut. She interviewed the two Cook-Bey brothers. She interviewed them because she wanted them to hear some words of the prophet, because some things had transpired before they done that. Now, I'm glad she done it, because she got a beautiful family. She got a beautiful family, and I remember up there on that second floor, going in that room up there, and they talking some mean, powerful stuff up there. See? But the lesson that was given, there was a lot of brothers and a lot of sisters, because, you know, we hear the prophet talking about Pearl Ali. But you don't hear nobody talking about Murray. And the reason why you don't hear nobody talking about Murray, because Murray was over there with Claude Green. After the prophet left, I remember we was up in Chicago when a lot of brothers went through, and she was there. But there's a lot of lessons, ain't but one temple. All of us that's in these different temples, we got to come back under one head like the prophet left. Man, the reason why I mentioned that sister and them Cook-Bey, bro, because that whole grand body left Chicago and they formed another grand body. And they did that because that first one was still working with the government. You got to understand what we went through. You got to understand all these brothers and sisters that was Moorish American, they left the prophet. We had a temple over there in Detroit, temple number 4. And we had some good, strong teaching brothers over there. But they took the money from the government and left and ran. So the grand body had to do that. And you know what I found out too? I was complaining about something. But sometimes Drew Ali, he wasn't too concerned about you eating a pork chop right now. But he was. But what he was concerned about is that we learn of our nationality and our divine creed. The rest gonna come. But once we stay in this government and learn who we are, the worst is yet to come. Because as I said, a lot of brothers and a lot of sisters lost their forms because they refused to keep saying that they was Moorish Americans. And Drew Ali said again, he said, why are we Moorish Americans? Now, you know Morocco got its independence March 2nd, 1956, from under the French rule. Now, before the French rule, who was they under? If Morocco got its independence March 2nd, 1956, from under the French rule, who was in charge then? So we need to understand this. Now, another thing. This is very important right here. You know, a lot of us don't want to have nothing to do with this government, but we have a nationality. We hooked us back up with the families of nations. And in order to deal with these subject matters that we have to deal with, first of all, we have to deal with these subject matters under our nationality. Because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. And look at all my friends. Man, I'm in my 70s. All my friends 75 years old. And most of them calling themselves black. And they went to school with me when the teacher told us that we were not Negro, colored, and black. He said because these names was given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained noble Jew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. So now I just told you that Ruth, see, Ruth and Boaz, Jacqueline, we are one bloodline. It was taken away from you. Somebody else grabbed over to. I remember when I was in Vietnam, I met this woman. She was from China. Because you know in Vietnam, you had them Chinese over there fighting with them Vietnamese. And they was over there rumbling. And they used to talk to her. I remember Ma T. Quinn used to teach all of us. And she was from China. And she said, we know who you are and who your forefathers were, but you're not Negro, colored, and black. Everybody know our history except us. And we need to learn our history so we can worship under our own vine and fig tree. I told you what it said about Jacqueline. I told you what it said about Jesus. I told you what they said about Boaz. And this is your brother and sister. This is your bloodline. Because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And this is very important because we have a brother getting ready to run for the mayor position. And that brother knows his nationality. Everybody have a nationality except you and me. Every other people. I just like right now when you begin to talk about those, they call themselves Jew. Come on, man. That's Asia. It wasn't no Europeans and Jew. Look at them people. They look, you don't even know who they are. They look just like. And when you begin to talk about the Germans, because I remember in Vietnam too, they had they had people that not only went to Vietnam, you had people to go over to Germany. But you had a lot of people, and this is what they're doing. They took their territory. So when you begin to understand your history, not his history, you will find out that they done stole the birthright. They done call themselves Jew now. They done call themselves everything under the sun. But listen to this. When the Moors went into Spain in 711, you know what? We was Moors. We ain't talking about religion right now. We ain't talking about religion because there was 100 different religions from Africa that was in Spain when we went there. See? So you need to understand that. I'm a Hebrew. Yes, you are. Yes, you are Hebrew. You're a Hebrew because when you was in Africa and then went into Spain, that's who you were. You gave up your birthright just to gratify your lower self. They stole our birthright. Now they got us looking like we Negro, colored, and black. That's why it's important about these flags. Drew Ali told us about nationality and divine creed. He said we were 3/5 of a man. That's what Drew Ali told us. He said we was 2/5 of a man. So now when you begin to talk about you 2/5 of a man, then you know what you're talking about. You're talking about nationality then. Because they were talking about, what's his name? Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was talking about civil rights. Civil rights is not even an issue that you can take before the UN. It's a non-political issue. So when they say that you are 3/5 of a man, you are 3/5 of a man. You 3/5 of a man because 5/5 is a whole all day. So if you 3/5 of a man, then that means 2/5 are missing. 2/5 are missing. And there's the 2/5 that's missing. Your nationality and your divine creed. Because I like to reiterate, man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who was able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. That's why I give so much honor to one of my instructors, Brother Lynch-Bey. And this was back in the 70s. And we had a center that we call Preparation Center, number 7. And then we had Preparation Center number 9 in Atlanta. But when we ran into this, brother, certain things you couldn't even do. You couldn't drink. You couldn't smoke. You couldn't mess with homosexuals. You couldn't do anything was diametrically opposed to what our forefathers taught, because that's why we went into Spain. We went into Spain to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. And how do you bring them out of the Dark Ages? By learning to love instead of hate. See, love is the only savior of the world. And Jesus, son of Mary, came to manifest that love of the man. And love cannot be manifest until its way has been prepared. And naught can rend the rock, bring down lofty hills, and fill the valleys up, thus prepare the way for purity. For purity in life, men do not comprehend, so it too must come in flesh. So man needs a pattern for his life. He loved to follow and not to lead. I remember I used to be around a lot of brothers. A lot of brothers scared of these dudes, and they knew that these guys were living according to hatred, slander, looters, murder, theft, and everything that harmed. But they say, man, we ain't going to do it this way because we over here, and we going to do it this way. It ain't but one way. Ain't but one true and divine way that truth can be obtained. And that is through love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, being taught universally to all nations in all lands. So I'm honored to be able to talk to you this evening about the Holy Prophet Noble Jew Ali. We have a book here, this Bible. This is a Bible that we study. We study the Bible because it's important that you do, because your forefathers is in the Bible. You know, just like in 15th century, when they took Jesus, they buried him in Vatican Square, and the Roman nations, they said the Roman nations founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth, for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. I remember they taught me Roman numbers. And that's why we got Roman numbers in our Moorish Holy Quran, to let you know that we are still in Rome. The Roman nations found the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth, for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. Now we're talking about the Roman yoke and law, and we're talking about those who buried our forefathers. But you know what? You and I are more European than the European. Because you have a lot of Europeans that took on the concepts. They done took on the ideologies of Jesus. And they coming now trying to learn the truth about themselves, because they can become Asiatic too. That's the cause of it all. Ain't but one. All those that call themselves European don't have to become Asiatic too. See, you my son anyway. You know how they talk about Mace? That's my son. And my son have to learn how to love his father. Because right now, you're living hatred. And we have to look up the concepts and the definition for hatred. We have to look up the definition for slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harm. You have to look up these attributes, and then it's going to make you a better person. As you study the teachings of the prophet and try to live out his example, you can change. Because this is what it's about. This is what Jew Ali do. He changed your life. He tells you that you are who your forefathers were. He tells you about Abraham, Boaz, by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by mercy. We're talking about Hezekiah. We're talking about King Solomon. We're talking about King David. And these are lessons that we are taught. That's why everybody that learned about the Prophet Noble Jew Ali, the first thing you want to do is take his basic lessons. Learn them for yourself, because there's some attributes that's in you that might not be in that other person. See? Because recitation is no sign of elevation. You could quote anything. You could quote anything to me, but you got to live a moral and clean life. Man can't serve two masters at the same time. You have to love one and you have to despise the other. So now, let me go somewhere over here. We're talking about apply the proper tool at the proper time. We're going to study our literature. And when we study our literature, there's some things that you're going to have to understand, because it's talking about apply the proper tool at the proper time. So we're talking about the tools of the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where you build up character. It said we use the square, we use the axe, we use the compass. So we're talking about building a temple. We're talking about building a temple that will never be destroyed. We're talking about a temple that's not made by hands. See, this is a mental temple. See, we're talking about the tools of the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where you build up character. We're talking about building up your character now. I remember a lot of times, I like to reiterate that 50 years ago, we talking one day, one way. But now, you ain't talking Drew Ali no more. You might quote him every now and then, but see, this is a foundation. The foundation is a foundation that you are living now. Because they say the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. And it was the Roman nation that founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. So now you had a brother and you had a sister. They left the temple because they wanted to go out and do everything that's diametrically opposed to what God said. Then they said, okay, I'm going to come back to the temple now. You can come back to the temple, come to your holy day, but before you can come to the upper room, you have to sit down and talk to the council, because you can't serve two masters at the same time. You're going to be it or you ain't going to be it. So you got to attend your meetings. You have to keep in line with all necessities. You're going to have to learn to love instead of hate. You're going to have to have some attributes in you that the children could look and see. Because right now, you know how they say you got the national side and you got the local side. It ain't but one side. You see what I mean? It ain't but one side, and that's the right side. See? And Drew Ali brought us that right side. Drew Ali brought us something because Allah sent him. It say whenever a nation is in need of a prophet, Allah will send one. So why did he send Drew Ali? He sent Drew Ali because we was in need for one. We was calling ourselves Negro, colored, and black. We didn't have a nationality. We had no rights that a citizen is bound to respect. And man, look what you see now. Look at us today. Look at the day. We're doing everything that our forefathers told us not to do. Me too. I'm right there with you. But you know what? We have to give back to Caesar. There it go again. We have to give back to Caesar his thought pattern and get the right thought pattern about Jesus. Because Jesus means justice. And justice is dealing upright, equal, and fair. Why did Allah send Jesus? See, we're talking about Jesus now. Why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? And it say to save the Israelites. See? Here you go again at the end of the iron hand oppression. See? And that's what we are dealing with right now. All my friends, they're big boys now. They're doing other things that diametrically opposed to what God say, because they're diametrically opposed. You can quote the prophet, talking about you love the prophet, but if you love the prophet, you'll do what the prophet say do. None can serve two masters at the same time. You have to love one, and you have to despise the other. And man, this week coming up, we got about 4 or 5 funerals from those that I come up with. And they're still going to have to go through all the ways of life. Before you can get, you say you want to see your mother again, you want to see your father and your aunt again, you got to get right with God. They might not be ready. See, because a lot of us, is doing the same thing that we're doing because we learned it from you. And most of the brothers that I know, the reason why they're doing all these things that's diametrically opposed to what God said do is because they're living out that creed. You can't serve two masters at the same time. You have to love one and despise the other. Thought must be developed by the exercise of strength. As a man unfolds, his God unfolds. Man God today, tomorrow is not God. Salvation is a ladder reaching from the heart of Allah to the heart of man, and it has 3 steps. Belief is first, and this is what man thinks perhaps is truth. Faith is next, and this is what man knows is the truth. But the last is fruition, and this is man himself, the truth. Now, truth and falsehood are strangely mixed, but then they strive, naught goes down, and truth abide. So Allah's God, Noble Drew Ali, is the last prophet in these days and times. So what I want to do right now, I want to recite the Moorish American prayer. I want to recite the Moorish American prayer because this is the source from which I draw my strength, and then I want to read something out of the Moorish Holy Quran. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Now let me go back to another chapter here in this Moorish Quran because I'm honored to do so. Now, I'm going to look at chapter 5. I'm going to read from chapter 5. And I'm going to read, okay, I just read one chapter from this Moorish Holy Quran, and I'll do the rest next time. It says, we use the square to measure all our lines, to straighten out the crooked places of the way and make the corners of our conduct square. We use the compass to draw a circle around our passions and desires to keep them in the bounds of righteousness. We use the axe to cut away the knotty, useless, and ungainly paths to make the character symmetrical. My time is up, and I thank you for yours. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.